Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Today we've got a special guest, and that's Tycho, who's a core contributor at StackingDAO. We've been doing a lot of episodes about the Bitcoin ecosystem, also one of the founders of Zest Protocol. So thanks for coming on, Tycho.
Yeah, appreciate it. Great to be here. And yeah, very excited to talk stacks DeFi, Bitcoin DeFi, and all of those things.
Fantastic. So for people at home, do you want to give us maybe a little bit of your background, maybe the tech background, or how you got into crypto, and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just sort of like, really going back, I always feel that um, when I was, growing up and at home, like, quite an academic background, my sort of dad would always sort of beat the drum about like, well, money is sort of, this sort of social construct and so on, right? So I was always very academic in that kind of approach. And yeah, then when crypto sort of started gaining more adoption, like, around that sort of, 2017, 18, 19 mark, I sort of got more and more drawn into it, like first with Bitcoin, then with sort of, programming layers and stuff like that. And then in 2020, it was really like clear that I wanted to really double down on this with just all my time, right? And but to me, it seemed like most interesting to work on an intersection of Bitcoin and programmability, which maybe sounds quite obvious, but back then, not a lot of people were working on it, right? So I did a bit of a scoping out, like who's actually working on that, and then yeah, saw that it was basically like, kind of three teams, right? There was the Lightning team, there was the RSK Rootstock team, and there was the Stacks team, right? And and yeah, like it seemed to me that maybe Lightning was very ideological and, maybe sometimes not as pragmatic enough, or not as pragmatic as I am. And yeah, Stacks sort of seemed very clear that there were, a lot of very smart people like working on this problem of Bitcoin programmability, and there would be a lot of value to add there. So through some hoops, got in touch with the founder of Stacks, Munib, and who then hired me as one of the first hires at his new company called Trust Machines, right, which is kind of like the leading Bitcoin infrastructure and application development company. And yeah, was at Trust Machines for a couple of years, worked on the core development of the Stacks chain upgrade, the Nakamoto upgrade that's going to, make Stacks as a Bitcoin L2 much faster and make it possible to use BTC there in a much more seamless way. And now as that release is coming up in only a couple of months, me and some of the early engineers spun out to build DeFi apps on Stacks. Zest Protocol for lending and StackingDAO for staking. Yeah, so that's a bit of a short rundown of like how we got here.
Fantastic. So, do you want to maybe talk about that Nakamoto upgrade? Because I know when we first had our mutual friend Gordon on the channel, it was due to happen a little while ago now. And do you want to maybe talk about the reasons for delays and just in general what that upgrade is going to mean for the Stacks ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. So Stacks Nakamoto, what's been worked on since the launch of the Stacks mainnet in January 2021. So maybe not a lot of people know this, but Stacks has been in mainnet since January 2021. And then, right after that, like development for, the V2 started, which is the Nakamoto upgrade, right? So something that's been in the works for quite a while. And what the Nakamoto upgrade does is basically two things. So one is it makes Stacks blocks, like a little thumbs up for that. It turns Stacks blocks into it turns the block time into five seconds, right?
Yes.
Whereas it's currently anchored to Bitcoin, the block time, so it's like every 10, 20 minutes. So that's like a huge speed upgrade. That's like 100x more speed.
Yeah.
And then secondly, it enables sBTC, which is essentially a seamless way to move BTC from L1 to L2 to then use it in smart contracts. And yeah, a lot of work has gone into the Nakamoto upgrade. There was one piece about like validator resiliency, you could call it. Like when a validator goes down, like how can it sort of very quickly reboot? And it was always known that this piece had to be done, but it was scoped for after the upgrade, right? It's sort of like a nice to have. And then like as we sort of really got close to the upgrade and setting up all the validators with institutional validators and Figment and these kind of guys, it became pretty clear that this feature actually was needed. And then that is what pushed the development time then to 28th of August is when it's going live. So yeah, when it comes to the delay, it was like a very well scoped out piece that everyone always knew needed to happen, but it was brought forward, and that's why we're in the world where we are now. But yeah, for something that's been in the works for 2 to 3 years, like a couple of months is not a very long time, even though it might seem so in crypto. And once that's there, then we get fast blocks and stacks. We can really get DeFi to take off, and then add BTC into the mix for for going up full swing.
Do you want to maybe talk about just the Bitcoin DeFi ecosystem in general? Because I mean, my sort of gut feeling is that we're so early in that space. It reminds me of when the first Ethereum dexes came out, and it was so clunky to use. And as you say, the 10-minute block times, and there's low liquidity, and it's almost like these are just out for the sake of being in their test versions. And so it hasn't really picked up that mainstream adoption. It wasn't until the same with Ethereum when we got the huge TVLs and we got those layer twos that now, and then even alternate layer ones, I guess, cheap transactions on Solana and now meme coins are taking off there, that kind
Oh
of
yeah.
thing. So it's all just churning away in the background. And I guess that's something that always happens in crypto, where the guys working behind the scenes are doing all the development, and people are saying, oh, this doesn't work and it's clunky, but it's the way it's meant to be. You got to battle test it, you got to build it out, and these things take time. So is that pretty exciting for you to be on the precipice of this next phase of Bitcoin DeFi?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a clear thing for everyone to take away, right? Like somehow in crypto, like magically always bad UX is in some to some extent the alpha, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what we see on stacks today, right? Because I think what's live today is not really like a chain that's ready for any kind of mainstream adoption. But we still see like almost $200 million of TVL, like more than $100 million in StackingDAO, right? We see more than $30 million in Zest Protocol. So people are doing stuff, right? Even though it takes them maybe 20 minutes to do a swap, or 30 minutes to do a deposit, or they need to set their slippage really high because a lot can happen
Yeah.
in 10, 20 minutes. But yeah, I mean, I remember it very clearly on Ethereum, right? In 2017 and early 2018, like things got clogged because of CryptoKitties, like blocks were also that long, and still like that's the time when decentralized exchanges got conceptualized, right? Like Etherland was founded, right, later to become Aave, all when this UX was not there, and it was not even clear
Yeah.
how Ethereum was going to scale, right? Like when Stani started like Etherland, right, in
Yes.
2017, like it was still, is it going to be sharding, is it going to be roll-ups, like we don't know. So when it's early to build applications, it's when it feels early, it's usually just the right time.
Yeah. And do you want to maybe talk about StackingDAO specifically and how you see that their role in the ecosystem? I'll just bring the website up quickly for people at home, and you'll see Arcadeco, Bitflow, Hermetica, Vela, Zest. We've nearly had all these projects on the channel lately, but is that again a similar comparison to maybe back in the day when you had to use wrapped Ethereum to interact with Ethereum DeFi, and now we're getting to the point of stake stacks and these other versions, so it all interoperates a bit better? Or how would you explain it to people at home?
Yeah, I would explain if people are looking for a very straightforward like comparison. I would say Stacking DAO is sort of what Lido is on Ethereum, right,
Yeah.
or what Jito is on Solana. It's basically a place where you can exchange STX for staked STX, right? STX. And that STX captures the protocol yield, which is quite high on stacks. It's like about 9 to 10%.
Yeah.
So it captures that yield, and then you can use that staked STX in DeFi in all those protocols that you mentioned, right? So you can supply it on DEXs like Bitflow and Velar. You can supply it on lending protocols for additional yield. You can supply it to options protocols like Hermetica for additional yield, right? And I would say it's really the flywheel that has got Stacks TVL to sort of really shoot up, right? If you look at the Stacks TVL charts on DeFi Llama, you will see a bit of a lull, and then like somewhere in December, like really a takeoff, and that's exactly when Stacking DAO launches, because a lot of people hold their STX because the yield is quite high, right? And they want to keep that yield, and DeFi opportunities don't really outweigh the protocol yield. But if you can get the protocol yield and use DeFi opportunities, right, then you really have a good start. And then on Stacking DAO, we also run a point system, right? So every STX that's put in, or like every staked STX that a user mints, they get 1 point per day.
Yeah.
But there's 50% or even 150% points boosters for them deploying that staked STX into DeFi. Right? So there's also been this really big incentive that we've been able to create with StackingDAO to deploy into Zest Protocol, for example, right? Which I founded, right? Or to deploy into Arcadico or deploy into Bitflow. So we currently see that roughly 50% of all the staked STX is deployed in DeFi, and that was all STX that wasn't deployed in DeFi, before.
And what are you allowed to say around that point system in regard to like future airdrops or how that might work and what that might lead to? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think for everyone, like think of it think of it as you would about any points program, right? I mean, essentially, why points are so great and so useful, right, is that it like allows protocols like StackingDAO to basically make it very clear, like, hey, this is how you provide value to the protocol as a user, right? Because that's kind of what's so different in Web3, right, compared to sort of Web2. Like I founded a SaaS company before, like one user doesn't really add much value to a Web2 product, right? But in a Web3 product, like the user and what's the user and what's the product is like kind of combined because you're building these networks, right? And points are essentially a way to measure like network participation, right, by an address or by a user, like ahead of decentralization of the protocol, right? And as the protocol decentralizes, StackingDAO will decentralize. It means that the community should in the end be the owners, and points measure community participation, right? And yeah, that's essentially like what the point system is for.
Yeah, and I think it makes it easier as well because in the past some people don't want to talk about the airdrop or if there's going to be a token or whatnot. Where, as you say now, I guess it's easier to talk about it because it's out there and say, hey,
yeah, I mean, and StackingDAO absolutely. I mean, there's be any doubt about that. It absolutely will have a token, right? I mean, that's how it will decentralize. Right?
Yeah.
So that's not news to anyone.
Yes.
So yeah, that's basically the thing that what the point system serves in the end. And StackingDAO was also the first point system on Stacks, and a lot of protocols have been able to learn from that and implement their own versions. And yeah, so it's really points mania on Stacks right now, right? A lot of protocols don't have tokens yet. They will use staked STX a bit ahead of sBTC coming to Stacks. Because when sBTC comes to Stacks, then TVL will balloon because suddenly all this BTC comes in, and right now protocols can already do sort of a test in prod essentially with staked STX, which will obviously also have a very important role after the Nakamoto upgrade, right, as the securer of all that BTC and so on.
Yeah, I guess maybe I want to tie it all in together with what we're saying about how early we are and with what we saw with Alex Labs the other day, and also to the point now where I think there's like 90 Bitcoin layer 2s coming out or something from whatever we had, those 3 ecosystem projects or the main categories of projects in 2021. So I guess advise people to be careful at home and only play with what you're willing to lose in these early stages and whatnot. But any light or insight on Alex Labs and the Stacks situation there from you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like for one, right, that Alex Labs team is a very committed team and kind of committed to clear communication. So if you're looking for the latest updates, I would definitely look at their Twitter. I would say more like I guess speaking for the broader ecosystem, right? I would say it's obviously like unfortunate that happened, right? The DEX is very important in an ecosystem. If you think about early ecosystems, you need a very strong DEX, you need a very strong liquid staking protocol like StackingDAO, and a very strong lending protocol like Zest Protocol, and they kind of form this trinity. And yeah, like if one of the parts of the trinity is not there, it becomes harder for everyone else to function. Now, luckily there are other DEX teams in Stacks by now as well, right? Like Velar, also Bitflow, which is currently a stable swap, but I expect some interesting developments to happen there as well soon. And yeah, in that sense, like liquidity will flow where the Stacks community thinks is best, and yeah, so I think that's going to be very important to not have sort of that central reliance maybe as much in one place, right? Because in the end, these protocols are early. Like teams might make certain decisions that maybe are not best for users, right? on StackingDAO, it's obviously not possible for any single actor to access user funds, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it's important that there are more teams building things, and that then the market has sort of more options to let liquidity flow where it thinks it's best.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to share with us, future updates, or where you see sort of StackingDAO or any of your favorite Bitcoin DeFi protocols coming along in this next cycle, or even super long term? And then we'll get into some Bitcoin philosophy.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. No, I think for StackingDAO, this is like a very exciting moment, even though maybe from a market perspective, it might not seem the most exciting time. But this is like a time where we can put a lot of things into place towards the Nakamoto upgrade, right? Because we all know that there will be a lot of action around stacks, towards that end of August. So right now we're like putting all the building blocks in place that we can then release in quick succession as the Nakamoto upgrade happens, and then also towards like the decentralization of the protocol, right? So some things that we're thinking of is like much deeper insight into validators, right, and how they perform on stacks, making it much easier for validators to attract stake, integrating staked STX in many more different places. And yeah, and also like maybe to lift like a bit of a tip of the veil, like also to dive really deep in the role that like sBTC, right, and BTC, the assets, can play in staking on stacks, right? Because in the end, like StackingDAO is this modular infrastructure that can be used for different assets too, right? So that's it. Like we're here to contribute to the health of the stacks network, and yeah, that's really what StackingDAO can do in a very powerful way. Now, when it comes to Zest Protocol, like there, of course, the sBTC upgrade is going to be critical, and that will allow people to borrow against BTC. That will allow people to earn yield on their BTC. And until then, like this is the time to build up an inventory of as many assets as possible, so that when that sBTC launch comes, that there is a very full market and the shelves are full for people to take out different kind of loans and run all kinds of strategies.
Fantastic. Well, I might share a few of my, I guess, Bitcoin thesis for this cycle going forward. So this is my
Yeah, be curious.
third or fourth cycle now, and I think every time the cycle's been different, but this time the drivers, the inflation is and the debt is clearly to that point now where it's on a lot more people's radars. It's not just the finance crowd or the cypherpunks anymore talking about this stuff. Like debt is going up trillions of dollars every month now, and the interest on that debt and that kind of thing. So that's one main driver. But then we've got all these other countries, and El Salvador's on board, and I hope we've got a couple more countries on board this cycle. But then I think the other thing that's going to cause this to be a perpetually growth cycle for Bitcoin and Bitcoin DeFi is as Bitcoin's price grows, and we can now lock it in these DeFi apps and staking apps and borrow against it. I think that's just a game changer. And we saw the explosive growth that happened in the Ethereum world once it has all these, dozens of other utilities as well as being the underlying protocol. So Bitcoin's got that global monetary underlying theme that it's always had, but now it's got this sort of technical DeFi thing that's, I think, going to draw back from a lot of other altcoins. And we've already kind of seen that haven't really had an alt season. There's been sort of meme season and whatnot, but I'm most bullish now, and my portfolio is positioned on the Bitcoin DeFi plays because I think that's where the biggest growth is going to come from. So any thoughts on that, or any of your own personal philosophies about Bitcoin's future?
Yeah, I think Bitcoin, this is a very exciting time for Bitcoin's future, right? As people are actually investing quite deeply into Bitcoin L2s or other Bitcoin scaling layers, right? So this is like a very critical time for the future of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's this sort of very exciting time where a lot of different things are going to be tried, right? A lot of different L2 designs will be put out. A lot of people will be trying to do different things on L1. I mean, there'll be a lot of scams, right? Let's face it, there will be a lot of scams. But the right things will come to the surface like sooner rather than later. And I think all of this experimentation and new developments will most likely lead to some kind of opcode change in Bitcoin, right? I think that's sort of where we're headed, not on the short time frame, like maybe 4 or 5 years, where all this L2 activity is going to come right now, and all this app activity, it's going to be paying a lot of the Bitcoin fees, and then towards the next halving, we might like see that kind of culture shift in Bitcoin where, people realize, hey, these dApps, these layer twos, these programming solutions are actually the ones securing the future of Bitcoin, right? And it's not maybe transactions as much, or it's not like payments as much. And when that realization comes, I think it's quite likely that that sort of consensus thought, which is always so critically important for any Bitcoin upgrade, right, might start to build around a potential, like, call it a taproot V2, right?
Yeah.
Something very simple, very basic, like what Bitcoin is always good at, but just that will make all that L2 activity so much easier and so much more trustless.
And I guess on that point, if we see the ETF inflows continue to, climb at the rate they are, how do you see that happen philosophically if we need to ever have a hard fork to upgrade, or, can this be done via soft fork you're talking about? Or, the point I'm getting at, whereas what happens if the centralized ETFs hold so much, they have so much of a say?
Yeah. I think the beautiful thing about Bitcoin, I don't think there'll ever be a hard fork to Bitcoin, to be honest. I mean, I think that's kind of out of the question. I think if there would be any type of upgrade, it would be a soft fork, right?
Yeah.
Just like Taproot and Segwit were.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the beautiful thing about Bitcoin, if you look at how Segwit and Taproot came about, right, it was that 3-4 years before the actual soft fork happened, people started talking about it. People started building consensus around it, right? Like devs started working on it. It's very much that phase that we sort of seem to be in right now, where competing designs are sort of proposed, right? People are thinking about it. People are discussing about different kind of directions to take. And then in the end, it's a social consensus amongst all the people who run Bitcoin nodes. So how much hash power you have as a miner or how much BTC you have, it doesn't matter, right? What matters is that critical mass of people who run Bitcoin nodes and where they think the future of Bitcoin should be headed, right? And literally what a soft fork is just some kind of critical mass of all of these people running Bitcoin nodes upgrading their node software, right?
Yeah.
And node software is upgraded all the time, by the way, right? Like it's not like a thing that's immutable, right? Like we're on node software is probably upgraded like this year as well, right?
Yeah.
Or last year. And there's newer software for running Bitcoin nodes all the time. But the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is that you can still take node software from 2011, run it, and it will sync with the latest chain tip.
Yeah.
Right? And like, what software from 2011 can you currently like run and it will just work, right? It probably won't, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we'll see. But to get that critical mass of millions of people saying like, yes, we'll upgrade to this version, and we're going to read these new transaction types, like, yeah, that is something that just takes a lot of time and needs to be uncontroversial, right? And that's also why I think it won't be a BIP or something like that, because it needs to be uncontroversial. And by the time that you formulate something as a BIP or a BIP, it's already, you're saying, well, this is a proposal, so it means there is debate, right? And then that's already very, very difficult. So it needs to be that organically grown idea that that's what's good for Bitcoin. And yeah, that's why it's important for builders to not have to wait for that, right? Or not have to go out and argue for that, because it's not a winning path. The winning path is working with what we have today, building something very exciting, right? Such as stacks or L2s that are being brought out, and then build applications with that like technology that people use.
Yeah.
That's what we can do right now, and that's where the value can be created at the moment.
Well, Tycho, I'll put all the links to follow yourself on socials and StackingDAO, Zest Protocol down below. But anything we haven't touched on today, or any final thoughts you want to share with people at home?
Yeah, I guess we wanted to say if I was breaking up at points over this chat, then apologies for that. I'm still trying to sort of set up the internet properly here.
It's
But
only a tiny bit.
no,
It's
other
been
than that,
fun.
it was a pleasure to chat, and yeah, some quick call to actions. I mean, make sure to check out DeFi protocols on Stacks, right? This is sort of the pre-Cambrian age of Bitcoin DeFi. So if you have some STX on your hands and you want to see what the future of Bitcoin DeFi might look like, then go to StackingDAO.com, mint some STX with your STX, and then go, for example, to Zest Protocol.com to supply that STX to earn, or that staked STX to earn some additional yield.
Yep.
And yeah, that's like a really nice first step to just get a taste for what the future of Bitcoin DeFi might look like.
Fantastic. Well, I've really enjoyed the conversation today, mate. You're doing great work for the Bitcoin DeFi space. So I wish you guys all the best, and we'll have to have you back on again in future sometime.
Yeah, likewise. Just feel free to reach out, and yeah, to everyone here, like, this is you're early, right? So this is definitely a very interesting path for the future of Bitcoin. So yeah, stick to it, and then let's uncover what's ahead.
Fantastic. Hope you guys have enjoyed that one at home, and we'll talk again soon. Cheers.